All right, who's gonna call this sucker?
If nobody has any objections, I believe I might be of service. Now, this will be a straight walk-off. Old school rules. First model walks, second model duplicates, then elaborates. Okay, boys, let's go to work.
Age before beauty code, jeez.
Whatever.
In a world overflowing with movies, we need a hero. Someone to separate the bad from the good.
Sounds like a job. Verbal dioramas. Watches all the movies from comedy to drama. From the top roll sound. And don't forget the action. She'll watch until the end and then she'll give you her reaction. Movies you know, movies you don't. Prequels, sequels, remakes, and trivia and outtake. Movies you know, movies you don't. Interesting stories, all the categories.
Disqualified.
Hi everyone, I'm Em and welcome to Verbal Diorama episode 265, Zoolander. This is the podcast that's all about the history and the googly of movies you don't know and movies you might know, but mostly it's movies you know because you probably watch them on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus or any other streaming service you might have access to. Streaming service? Why would it be called a streaming service? I know Netflix isn't made of water. I'm not one of those stupid models. It's called a steaming service because watching movies is so hot right now. Just like that, Hansel. Welcome to Verbal Diorama. Whether you are a brand new listener to this podcast, welcome back, regular returning listeners. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing to listen to this podcast. And thank you for allowing me to go full Zoolander with my intro. I am so happy to have you here for the history and legacy of Zoolander. Because you see, podcasting is a lot like modelling. It's all about being really, really ridiculously good looking. Well, obviously you can't tell because I'm behind a microphone right now. But mostly huge thanks to everyone who listens to this podcast and has continued to listen to and support this podcast for the 265 episodes this podcast has now been going. It means so much to me to have your support. And the most recent episodes of this podcast have been on The Bourne Identity and Cloverfield. And Cloverfield was a lot of fun to get into the marketing and the ARG aspect of Cloverfield. This one is going to be a very different type of fun because I feel like I can truly let my hair down, let Zoolander mess with my hair, make it look all lovely. Honestly, it does look quite good right now. Zoolander asks the age-old question, why male models? Well, the truth is male models have been assassinating world leaders for over 200 years. John Wilkes Booth was the original model/actor, and while Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't a male model, the two lookers who capped Kennedy across the grassy knoll certainly were.
But why male models?
Are you serious? I just told you that a moment ago. Here's the trailer for Zoolander.
He's suave, debonair,
So courageous.
the epitome of cool.
You rule.
His name is Zoolander. Derek Zoolander,
He's almost too good looking.
international male supermodel.
The style and the hair, you know, it's almost like the new afro for the white man.
But behind those eyes is a highly trained man of action.
You rock. No, you rock.
And perhaps the world's only hope of stopping a sinister assassination plot.
The fashion industry has been behind every major political assassination over the last 200 years. And behind every hit, a male model.
So why male models?
They do as they're told.
That is not true.
Yes, it is, Derek.
Okay.
Ben Stiller. Owen Wilson. Will Ferrell.
They're breakdance fighting. Taste my pain!
Christine Taylor.
When I was in 7th grade,
I became bulimic.
You can read minds.
Zoolander.
Must be eliminated.
They must use all their skills.
If I can create a basic disguise for us with this professional makeup kit, we may just be able to sneak in undetected.
Surprise! Did you find the files? They're in the computer.
They're in the computer?
To outsmart the most dangerous organization on the planet.
We got 30 years worth of files right here in this computer that are gonna bring you down.
Oh no.
Where'd all the files go?
And still find time to help the children.
I give you the Derek Zoolander Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good.
What is this?
A center for ants?
How can children learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the building?
Zoolander.
Derek Zoolander, a dim-witted but famous three-time winning VH1 Male Model of the Year, finds his career in decline as the elusive and mysterious Hansel, he's so hot right now, wins the award instead. As Derek contemplates his future and mourns the loss of his three model best friends to a freak gasoline accident, he ponders if there really is more to life than being really ridiculously good-looking. After fashion industry tycoon Mugatu finds out the Prime Minister of Malaysia plans to end child labour in the fashion industry, Mugatu decides to use Derek and brainwashes him into assassinating the Prime Minister of Malaysia at his derelict fashion show. Derek's main rival Hansel becomes an unexpected ally as they uncover the conspiracy with the help of investigative journalist Matilda Jeffries. Derek, Hansel and Matilda plan to thwart Mugatu's evil plan, give in to the power of some strong tea together, and Derek finally unveils Magnum to the world. Let's run through the cast. We have Ben Stiller as Derek Zoolander, Owen Wilson as Hansel MacDonald, Christine Taylor as Matilda Jeffries, Will Ferrell as Jakobin Mugatu, Mila Jovovich as Katinka Ingeborg-Vienna, Jerry Stiller as Maury Ballstein, David Duchovny as J.P. Pruitt, John Voight as Larry Zoolander, Vince Vaughn as Luke Zoolander, Judah Friedlander as Scrappy Zoolander, Alexander Skarsgård as Mikas, Nathan Lee Graham as Todd, Justin Theroux as Evil DJ, David Bowie as himself, and Binny Zane as himself. Featuring additional cameos by Lance Bass, Tyson Beckford, Victoria Beckham, Emma Bunton, Stephen Dorff, Fred Durst, Tom Ford, Cuba Gooding Jr., Fabio, Lucas Haas, Tommy Hilfiger, Paris Hilton, Heidi Klum, Lenny Kravitz, Karl Lagerfeld, Lil' Kim, James Marsden, Anne Meara, Natalie Portman, Mark Ronson, Gavin Rossdale, Winona Ryder, Gary Shandling, Christian Slater, Gwen Stefani, Donald Trump, Melania Trump, Donatella Versace, Sandra Bernhard, Amanda Lepore, and Veronica Webb. Zoolander has a screenplay by Drake Sather, Ben Stiller, and John Hamburg, a story by Drake Sather and Ben Stiller, and was directed by Ben Stiller. Growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, I remember one thing being vividly clear. Supermodel equaled superstar. Whether it was Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Claudia Schiffer, Christy Turlington, Linda Evangelista, or the upstart Kate Moss, supermodels were the it girls of celebrity. In the 1980s, as models began to gain notoriety on their own, the term supermodel gained popularity and quickly became the model equivalent of a superstar by the 1990s, when they were frequently featured in the media. Models suddenly had a voice. They landed movie roles, made appearances in talk shows, they were mentioned in gossip columns, and they frequently appeared in nightclubs. These models were adored by everyone and became well known just by their first name. Many went on to become the faces of perfumes and cosmetic companies. They also started their own lingerie lines, they had television shows and fitness videos. Naomi Campbell made history for being the first black model to appear on the front cover of Time, French Vogue, British Vogue, and the September issue of American Vogue, which is the biggest and most important issue. In the mid-90s, it was all heroin chic, led by Kate Moss, with pale skin, super skinny frames, and perfect bone structure. The late 90s was all about glam and curves with Tyra Banks, Heidi Klum and Giselle Bundchen, and the dawn of the Victoria's Secret Angels. But no female model has since commanded the limelight like those original supermodels did. And modelling has changed substantially in recent years, with more of a focus on diversity and representation. What hasn't changed, of course, is male models. They are exactly the same as they always have been, and no one epitomises male modelling like Derek Zoolander. You know his name. You don't need me to tell you who Derek Zoolander is. But this is a podcast about the history and the googly of movies you don't know and movies you might. So just like Derek Zoolander walks the runway without turning left, let's go right into the story of Zoolander. It all started at the 1996 VH1 Fashion Awards, and producer Joel Gallen was executively producing the show after being in charge of the MTV Movie Awards for a few years previously. The fashion industry was known as an industry that took itself very seriously, and it had a certain set of standards. Gallen decided to send up the industry with a series of shorts to make fun of models, agents and photographers, just to make the VH1 Fashion Awards a little bit less serious than the runways of Paris and Milan. A bit like Saturday Night Live skits, nothing too hurtful, but include well-known actors. And Drake Sather was tasked with writing a short about a dumbass male model. It was thought that making him a male model would be funnier. The name Derek Zoolander as a portmanteau came from a famous male model at the time, Mark Vanderloo, and a rising model, Johnny Zander, who were both nominated for Male Model of the Year at the 1996 VH1 Fashion Awards. 1996 was a fairly big year for Ben Stiller. He had directed his second feature-length movie, The Cable Guy, and he himself was an up-and-coming comedic talent. He wouldn't hit the big time until 1998's There's Something About Mary, that's episode 280 of this podcast, but he was up for starring in this short, which would eventually be released on the Zoolander DVD, Derek Zoolander Male Model, which was due to air at the 1996 event. After having second thoughts that the short wouldn't go down well with the industry, Stiller called Gallen, who assured him they would play it for a few thousand people to see if it worked, and if it didn't work, it wouldn't air. The character was a huge hit, it aired, and it was so popular, they brought the character back for the 1997 VH1 Fashion Awards for Derek Zoolander University. And now a word from this episode's sponsor.
Hey guys, ever wonder what it would be like to be a model? To earn big bucks just to have your picture taken? To get paid to hang out with the most beautiful women in the world? Stop wondering and start doing. This man can show you how.
Hi, I'm Derek Zoolander, president and model and founder and dean and CEO of the Derek Zoolander University of Modeling for Men.
Derek will personally instruct you in male modeling keys to success.
There's a reason why they call it a catwalk, because you've got to be a tiger out there. There's so many distractions when you walk out. There's Steven Dorff on the left, Michael Stipe on the right, Bianca Jagger on the left. Who's that at the end? Could it be David Duchovny? I'm not sure, because I fell flat on my face. You've got to have blinders on out there, just like a cow.
He's miraculously condensed 15 years of modeling into one 8-week course.
Here's one for you. 2 minutes till runway and you've got an erection. What do?
At DZU, positive attitudes lead to positive results.
I am sexy.
I am sexy.
I am super sexy.
I am super sexy.
I am plain. Testing. By the time you've graduated from DZU, you'll have logged over 700 hours on one of these, my patented training runways. That's more hours than most airline pilots have. Flying airplanes. I truly believe that out of all the male modeling universities out there, mine is the best. But don't take my word for it. So, Mark, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Derek.
How's the modeling going?
Very good, thank you. And I do mean thank you, Derek.
I can't take all the credit for your success. Okay, I will. But seriously, how much do you think your success has to do with your attending the Derek Zoolander University of Modeling for Men?
All of it.
That's a great story.
It's the truth.
Or my name ain't Zoolander. Nothing is more rewarding to me than having one of my former students come up to me and say, "Thanks for the help, Derek." Or, "Gee, Derek, I really appreciate the fact that you were so helpful." Or, "Derek, Me help, you did.
You'll learn thousands of tips and techniques that only a supermodel of Derek's stature would know.
Talk to the pants, make them your friend. Don't be afraid to really get into a deep conversation with it. Talk to the hem, Marcus. Talk to it, say hello.
Hello, Ham.
Hello, Marcus. Scared you, didn't I? But that's the point. Okay, by the way, everything I'm saying here goes for shirts as well.
And if you call now, as a special bonus, you'll get the Derek Zoolander 21-month calendar. 21 all-new full-color photographs taken by one of fashion's most outstanding photographers to make the next year and 9 months just a little more handsome. And a DZU tote bag with these items no male model should be without. Hairbrush, comb, gel, tanning oil, protective lip balm, larger comb, bottled water, crackers and cheese, small bottle of liquor, tissues, sewing kit, pudding, adhesive tape. Derek will teach you all the classic looks that have made him an international supermodel, from Ferrari to Blue Steel. Plus, you'll learn several new looks. The alluring Tiger Shark, the gritty Nasty Pants, the heartbreak of broken eggs, and the never-before-seen look sure to be the hottest of 1998.
You're crazy if you think I'm giving that one away.
If this isn't the most important call you make this year,
then my name ain't Zoolander.
Call 1-600-ZOOLANDER for your free consultation and evaluation. Learn to model a whole new way, the Zoolander way.
So that 1997 event, a commercial for the Zoolander School of Male Modelling, cemented Derek Zoolander as one of the finest male models in history. But then another man entered the picture, a man of mystery, an international man of mystery. In May 1997, Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery was released, which parodied the James Bond franchise as well as 60s pop culture. Joel Gallen had an idea for a Zoolander feature film, and would Ben Stiller be interested in doing it? Ben Stiller was a huge fan of Austin Powers and what Mike Myers had done with the character, and that gave everyone the encouragement that maybe a feature-length Zoolander might just work. Both New Line and Fox were interested in the idea, but ultimately the project had to sit with Paramount, as Paramount owned VH1 and the VH1 Fashion Awards, well, the clue's in the name. And it went through several iterations, including Derek having a twin brother, and Stiller playing not only both parts, but also the part of Maury Ballstein, the part that his dad Jerry Stiller would end up playing. At one point, it was about Mugatu breeding models and experimenting on them. There was a Manchurian Candidate idea, and John Hamburg joined early on to help write the screenplay with Ben Stiller. The first thing he got rid of was an idea that Derek dies at the end and ends up in heaven. It had to be a worthy ending, but ideally something upbeat and feel-good. Hamburg wanted the audience to actually care about Derek, despite his vapid nature and stunning good looks. Hansel was written with Owen Wilson in mind, but there was a question mark over whether he could do it. Famously, Jake Gyllenhaal auditioned for the role of Hansel and was actually really good, but then it turned out Wilson was available and could do the role, so the role immediately went to him. Andy Dick was lined up to play Mugatu, but he was contracted to the TV series Go Fish, and so he couldn't commit to the role. He ended up playing the much smaller role of Olga the masseuse, and then Go Fish got cancelled after 5 episodes, so he probably could have done it, but Will Ferrell was cast by that point. For the part of Matilda, originally Christine Taylor hadn't even been considered. The script had been written before she and Ben Stiller had even met. They married in the May of 2000, and Stiller was auditioning other actresses for the part. And Taylor didn't want to audition as the girlfriend or wife of the writer/star/director/model. Allegedly, Sarah Jessica Parker and Kate Hudson were 2 of the other actresses in the running, but they and one other unnamed actress dropped out. Meanwhile, Taylor had auditioned for the role of Pam Burns in Meet the Parents, and she hadn't got that part, despite it being opposite Ben Stiller, and they'd agreed to not collaborate on Zoolander. But the lack of actresses available for Matilda led to Stiller asking his new wife if she'd consider taking on the role. Taylor had worked with Paramount on the Brady Bunch movies, which are super fun, by the way, and because she had this good relationship with Paramount, she didn't really need to go through any hard audition process. Taylor would later joke that she was 4th choice and cheap. It ended up being an entire family affair. About 2 weeks before shooting started, they still didn't have their Maury, despite Stiller originally planning to do the role as well as Derek, and producers Scott Rudin and Stuart Kornfeld suggested Stiller ask his father, Jerry Stiller, to play Maury. His mother, Anne Meara, also has a small part too, as a heckling protester. His sister, Amy, also has a small role as a member of Hansel's posse. And Christine Taylor's brother, Brian, also has a small role in the movie too. Ben Stiller ended up taking on a lot of responsibility on this movie, but that wasn't originally the case, because he wasn't originally up to direct. He'd spoken to Adam McKay to direct the movie, but he declined. McKay would make his directorial debut 3 years later with Anchorman instead. Writer John Hamburg was also asked by Stiller to direct, but he also declined, suggesting Stiller would be the better director. And Stiller's connections in the industry led to some of the incredible cameos, all of which led credence to Derek being an internationally recognised male model. Stiller had known Patton Oswalt for a while, which led to Oswalt cameoing as the monkey photographer. Billy Zane kept running into Stiller while he was doing research at Hugo Boss shows in Manhattan. Zane was living in the area at the time, he was frequenting fashion shows, and Stiller asked Zane if he'd appear in the famous walk-off scene, which of course leads to one of the biggest cameos in this movie, that of David Bowie. Bowie, of course, having a song called Fashion, and rubbing shoulders with some of the biggest rock stars and actors for decades, was perfect for this role. No one on Zoolander ever thought they'd snag Bowie, or anyone like Bowie, but they put the request out anyway on the off chance, and not only did he say yes, both Stiller and Wilson would say he was an incredible presence on set, a true gentleman, and had a brilliant sense of humour. They talked about using some of his music, which ultimately never happened other than the slice of Let's Dance that we get. The walk-off is to Michael Jackson's Beat It, but Bowie was so gracious with his time, and both actors would pay their respects to the man after his passing in 2016. Another David was integral to the plot though, and that's David Duchovny. Duchovny was given the choice of 3 roles in the movie, and he chose the hand model J.P. Pruitt. He wanted to fully send up the mystery and intrigue after being Fox Mulder since 1993, but he also wanted to be unrecognisable, insisting on a wig and padding to make himself look like an ageing model, but with his hand in stasis, and wanting to play the role as straight as possible. And this was a movie with several slashies in it, actors/models and not the other way round. Not just Fabio, of course, but also James Marsden in a small role as the original model/actor, and Mila Jovovich, a successful model who was also a successful actress. Stiller felt like having her as Katinka helped legitimise his movie. Jovovich used her mother's Russian accent as inspiration and added a few extra flares to her role's personality, not being afraid to send up her own modelling background. During pre-production as well, Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson spent 2 days being photographed by Frank Ockenfels to create full model portfolios for both Derek Zoolander and Hansel. The competing supermodels posed in mop ad campaigns for Gucci, Perry Ellis, Tommy Hilfiger and Evian, as well as bogus magazine covers for GQ, Details, Rolling Stone, Surfer, American Way, ESPN and the International Male Catalogue. The photos appear in the film, giving an off-kilter reality to this world where the characters of both Derek and Hansel are vying for the year's top modelling prize, the VH1 Male Model of the Year. While it seems that filming a movie like Zoolander should be pretty straightforward, it actually wasn't completely straightforward. While the first scenes they filmed were in the model cemetery, they had over 100 painters and carpenters making detailed headstones that sent up the fashion world. Those scenes were over fairly quickly, but others, like Derek's humiliating loss at the VH1 Fashion Awards for his 4th consecutive Male Model of the Year, were time-limited for other reasons. They filmed the movie during the 2000 autumn fashion season in New York, and that included shooting at the real FH1 Vogue Fashion Awards at Madison Square Garden. They filmed with celebrities going in, hence the wide variety of cameos, and the scenes of Derek losing the award to Hansel were shot in 3.5-minute chunks, in 4 commercial breaks. It was a live-to-tape show with hundreds and hundreds of people in the audience. And every time they went to a commercial break, they had to change the podium on stage and put up their own prop. They then had to film Ben Stiller walking down the aisle and up onto the stage, so they asked the audience to not leave their seats during the commercial breaks. Jennifer Lopez was meant to be involved in the scene where Derek mistakenly collects the award, but she dropped out at the last minute. They have to have somebody recognisable fill in for the character sitting next to Derek when they call out Hansel's name. So they asked legendary fashion designer Donatella Versace if she would do it, and bizarrely, she agreed. All of the paparazzi outside of the event were real paparazzi, because they really wanted to take advantage of the red carpet and the crowds that were coming in and out. Producer Monica Levinson told the photographers that she was going to be bringing Ben Stiller out, but that she wouldn't bring him out unless they called him Derek. They all agreed to do it, so Ben Stiller came out and they all start yelling Derek. And so they got the shot at the awards looking like Derek Zoolander was the king of all male models. A similar thing happened for the celebrity interviews. Cinematographer Barry Peterson asked each actor to answer a couple of questions about how amazing Derek Zoolander was, and all of the people they asked absolutely nailed it. And speaking of absolutely nailing it, the orgy scene, where the night before Derek is supposed to turn into an assassin, Matilda and Derek go to Hansel's apartment to hide from Mugatu, and the three of them drink some special tea before starting a little get-together with Hansel and his extended entourage. No, that's not a euphemism. But because of this scene, Stiller had to argue his case with the ratings board because they wanted to give the movie an R rating. And he argued he would never put his wife in anything that would be questionable. They'd end up having to condense this scene, and it had to contain fewer characters overall, and it would lead to the MPAA giving the movie a PG-13 rating. This was all obviously set in Hansel's apartment, which also has a soil room, and that's not what it sounds like. This is the place where Hansel retreats for meditation, and it has a floor made entirely of earth. Production designer Robin Standifer planted grass around the room's perimeter and strung thousands of glass beads from the ceiling, giving the feeling of an East Indian palace. And this was a fifth-floor loft, and so they had to bring the soil up in the freight elevator, but it is all completely genuine. Standifer and costume designer David C. Robinson wanted a highly stylized world similar to the layout of a fashion magazine, going from one look to another, constantly bombarded by jarring, rich imagery, but focusing on high fashion concepts. For the film's climactic scenes for the derelict fashion show, which take place in a subway tunnel, Standifer found a huge abandoned power plant in Long Island across the East River from Midtown Manhattan. It was a grungy cathedral-like industrial space. And in all scenes, it was important that clothing stood out, with signature pieces from Burberry and Cavalli. Derek's specific style was more of an old-school model with suits and collar shirts, with a very early 90s feel, and Hansel was more about extreme sports, grunge model. For Derelict, Robinson and his staff collected rubbish for weeks, picking through trash and creating unique looks. They went to flea markets on weekends and bought beautiful pieces of antique garbage, old dolls from the 30s, and they pinned them to the coats. A boa was made out of inflated condoms. At Parsons Mears, a Broadway costume shop in New York, the staff there were helping create some of the looks for Derelict, when none other than Bette Midler walks in, and she says she wants one of these costumes for Halloween. I guess most people don't say no to Bette Midler, but David Robinson did say no to Bette Midler that day. Principal photography concluded with 10 days of filming in Los Angeles. For the very last shot, a nighttime image of the Pennsylvania coal mine where Derek's father and brothers work, Stiller wanted the added touch of a dog wandering through the shot. This is where the family dog Kahlua, a chocolate Labrador, came into good use. Kahlua wasn't a trained dog actor, but she did exactly what she needed to do in the scene. A model pooch, you could say. It was a Herculean task to get everyone who needed to be available in New York on the same day, and there was no extra money to shoot days around or fill crowds with CGI. Ben Stiller really did the overtime on Zoolander. He called people, he asked them to be there, he asked for favours. He was pulling 4 roles on this movie, and without him, it wouldn't have been done to the level it ultimately was. And this small movie parodying the fashion world just got bigger and bigger. On-location shoots are expensive, but shooting in New York gave the movie authenticity. It gave them better actors, better cameos, and better extras, and throughout, Stiller was being hammered by Paramount over costs, despite him being a 4-in-1 actor, director, writer, and producer. Will Ferrell in particular was still on Saturday Night Live at the time, and filming had to be worked around his SNL schedule. Lorne Michaels wasn't very happy apparently that Ferrell had grown and dyed his hair for Zoolander. But let's be honest, this is Derek Zoolander. Of course you'd do anything for him. This is a great way to segue into the obligatory Keanu reference of this episode. And if you're wondering what that is, it's where I link the movie that I'm featuring with Keanu Reeves because, like Derek Zoolander, Keanu Reeves is the best of men. Now, the last episode, I struggled because I actually forgot to do it. I didn't forget to do it this time. And the easiest way for me to link Keanu to Zoolander is obviously Derek Zoolander is one of the greatest male models of all time. But just on a side note, Keanu has also done a little bit of modelling in his time. He'd been on the cover of Esquire, Vanity Fair, GQ, Time, and he's been featured in Harper's Bazaar, and he became the face of Saint Laurent in 2019. Now, it's not Zoolander levels of male modelling, but I think we can agree that Keanu Reeves has given it his best shot to try and become the level of Derek Zoolander. And obviously, I'm not going to play the song, lest it reactivate Derek's programming, but Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Relax was used as the trigger song in the movie. Limp Bizkit would record their own version for the film, but Powerman 5000's cover was used instead in both the film and on the soundtrack. The score for Zoolander was conducted by David Arnold, which is a bit of a stark difference to the score that he did for Independence Day, which was only a few episodes ago. The first cut of Zoolander was shown to Sherry Lansing of Paramount, and like all studio bigwigs, she would usually then give her notes. But when it came to Zoolander and that first cut, she had no notes for Zoolander. She thought it was brilliant. Despite all of the turmoil making the movie, Paramount were ecstatic about the movie, and the release was set for the 28th of September 2001. The week before the movie was set to open on the 28th of September 2001, there was supposed to be a big New York premiere for the film. But on Tuesday, September the 11th, 2001, a TV spot for the movie was interrupted by the first breaking news reports that a plane had crashed into one of the Twin Towers. Now, the last few episodes have all mentioned 9/11 in some way, and this is a completely unintentional link, I might add. Independence Day for its retrospective imagery, the Bourne Identity because of its problems meaning it ended up not coming out just after 9/11, and the changes made to certain scenes because of 9/11, and then Cloverfield for basically being a movie born of 9/11. But Zoolander was then put into a difficult situation, because what do you do if your movie is 2 weeks from release and one of the most awful terrorist attacks in American history happens? Promos for the movie were immediately pulled from TV, and TV schedules themselves were completely changed to reflect the country's mourning period. But Paramount were refusing to push the release date of the movie, saying that the marketing money had been spent. They were still planning to release Zoolander into American theatres 2 weeks after 9/11. They felt it would be a tonic for people who wanted a break from the seriousness of the world. They might want to go and see a silly comedy. The original New York premiere was changed to the Paramount lot in Los Angeles. Everything was scaled down. Security was heightened, cars were checked for explosive devices, and still the question kept coming up in press junkets and interviews. Was it in good taste to release Zoolander so soon after 9/11? And of course, the general company line was, well, it's a comedy. Hopefully people will enjoy it and it will take their minds off the more serious things that are going on in the world. And so Zoolander was released on the 28th of September 2001, the same week as Don't Say a Word and Hearts in Atlantis. Zoolander would be sandwiched between both of them in second that week. The following week, Training Day and Serendipity were released, knocking Zoolander down to 4th. Zoolander would end up staying in the top 10 for 4 weeks. On its $28 million budget, Zoolander would gross $45.2 million domestically in the US and $15.6 million internationally, for a total worldwide gross of $60.8 million. So while it wasn't necessarily a flop, it didn't quite do the business it was expected to. Because of its plot, the film also wound up being banned in Malaysia, since the movie shows an attempt on the Prime Minister of Malaysia's life. It was declared definitely unsuitable by Malaysia's censorship board, and the controversial elements also led the Board of Film Censors in Singapore to ban it as well. It was eventually rated NC-16 and released in Singapore in 2006. The movie is still banned in Malaysia. Ben Stiller made the executive decision to digitally remove any backgrounds that originally contained the Twin Towers. He defended his decision to erase images of the World Trade Center from the film, saying that he did what he thought was appropriate at the time. The Twin Towers were later restored for the 2016 Blu-ray release. At the time, critics actively disliked Zoolander. The Washington Post described it as a one-joke movie, while Time Out wrote that it was a vanity comedy that fails at almost every level. It has since been re-evaluated ever so slightly, with Rotten Tomatoes giving it a 65% rating, and the site's critical consensus reading, "A wacky satire on the fashion industry, Zoolander is one of those deliberately dumb comedies that can deliver genuine laughs." In 2008, Stiller said he intended to make a sequel to Zoolander, and by January 2011, a script had been completed. On the 10th of March 2015, Stiller and Wilson appeared at Paris Fashion Week in character as Derek Zoolander and Hansel McDonald. Zoolander 2, or Zoolander number 2, was released on the 12th of February 2016. I've only ever seen it once, but I don't remember it being especially funny. I guess the series wrote its own googly. An animated film, Zoolander Supermodel, was released on Netflix in August 2016. But in 1998, Bret Easton Ellis wrote the novel Glamorama, which is about a vapid male model who gets entangled in a scheme hatched by foreign terrorists who enlist him through the fashion industry. Overall, a remarkably similar plot to Zoolander. Ellis claimed in 2005 that he tried to pursue legal action, acknowledging that Zoolander and Glamorama shared similarities. In a 2009 interview with the BBC, Ellis was questioned about the similarities again, but claimed he couldn't talk about it because of an out-of-court settlement for which he received an undisclosed sum. Infinitely quotable and tonally ahead of its time, Zoolander became eventually the paragon of American comedy, holding up after repeat viewings and slowly gaining its own cult following. While there are parts that haven't held up over time, Matilda using a slur against Katinka and the black and brown face disguises, for example, it's overwhelmingly observant, funny, and wears its heart on its dumbass designer sleeves. Even though Zoolander is obviously a parody, it also addresses issues that are relevant to the fashion industry, such as designer labels breaking the law against child labour. The rise of fast fashion and sweatshops is something we're still talking about in 2024, not to mention the prevalence of eating disorders among models and the pressure on almost all women to remain thin and attractive. The movie also serves as a look into the future, to expose the narcissistic and appearance-obsessed culture would remain and continue to flourish as. Many now agree that Zoolander was ahead of its time. While it obviously predated social media, it tapped into those things that would explode with the rise of social media influencers and models as internet personalities, not to mention the rise of the Kardashians who make perfect pouts a trademark. It makes sense having big fashion designers as supervillains because they have this appearance of being vain, over-concerned with profit, and a bit snooty. Apparently, Anna Wintour gave her support to this production, which also led to other designers giving their support. But ultimately, this is an industry obsessed with perfection and glamour at all times. That hasn't changed, even with modelling now being more diverse and with all body types represented. Fashion is silly. The tired old cliches are here. Models are dumb, the industry is vapid, the clothes are ridiculous. But there's something so great about its ridiculousness. That the files aren't just in the computer, but in the computer. The cliches are just a launchpad to something even more surreal. The idea that male models will do anything you tell them to, and that one look can save us all. But there's genuine sincerity and truth behind each ridiculous thing. Take Mugatu, for instance. He is a scathing parody of the insider culture and privilege that so often gives the impression that the fashion world is out of touch. The Derelict campaign, for which Derek has chosen the face of, is described by Mugatu as inspired by the very homeless, the vagrants, the crack whores who make this wonderful city so unique. And this is a clear rip-off of John Galliano's controversial line from his 2000 Dior collection, haute couture inspired by Paris's homeless. These garments were distressed, they were oversized, they had snow-covered hats and hoods. Models were wrapped in trousers made of newspaper, the faces of the models were covered in dirt, and Galliano claimed he wanted to make a statement about homelessness. And it certainly got the conversation of France's homeless going. But after that, nothing of any substance actually happened to help those people. Maybe the world has finally caught up to Derek Zoolander after 23 years. With its absurd humour, incisive critique of the fashion industry, and long list of celebrity cameos, Zoolander had left a lasting legacy that has only become more prescient over time. The superficiality that characterised Zoolander as the greatest male model of his generation has now permeated society as a result of the proliferation of mobile phones, social media, and the selfie generation. Magnum, Le Tigre, and Blue Steel, they are all classic looks, of course, but also technically all variations on the classic duck face. Every app now has beauty filters that smooth out fine lines, add makeup, and help us all feel really, really, really ridiculously good looking in every shot. And if we don't, well, there's always Photoshop, right? And even the TikTok generation has embraced Zoolander the only way it knows how. Short form video of, excuse me, brah, you're excused, and you're not my bra. And when you get to a certain age, you realise that moisture really is the essence of wetness, and wetness really is the essence of beauty. Seriously, listeners, moisturise, and don't forget sunscreen, and I'm sure Derek would tell you the same. I think we can all learn something from Derek Zoolander, though. A young man who saw his reflection in a spoon and realised he could make a career out of being good-looking. Recognise your strengths. Learn that youth and beauty doesn't last forever, that a Hansel will come along and may be better than you in certain areas, but that Hansel might be looking to you for guidance. That maybe your family might not support you in your goals, but once they learn how amazing you are, your loved ones will be there. That people in positions of power like Mugatu might not have your best interests at heart. That sometimes you do have to stand up and walk off for what you believe in, and that with great power comes great responsibility. To look great at all times and use your good looks to save the Prime Minister of Malaysia with that one look that you've been working on. Isn't Magnum just incredible? But that's by the by, because fundamentally we should always try to give back to our communities, not the ant community, although they are important too, but pass on our knowledge to the next generation by teaching them to read good and helping them to learn other stuff good too. Wait, is Zoolander actually a masterpiece? That Derek, he's so hot right now. Thank you for listening. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on Zoolander. And as always, thank you for your continued support of this podcast. This episode has been a lot of fun to put together. And if you have enjoyed and you want to help this podcast grow, then please leave a rating or review wherever you found this podcast. You could tell your friends and family, especially if they're a huge fan, like we all are, of Derek Zoolander. Tell your friends and family about this episode. Help spread the word about Verbal Diorama and what I am trying to do, which is basically to make everyone really, really, really ridiculously good looking by listening to this episode. That's a guarantee. Listen to this episode, you too will be really, really, really ridiculously good looking. And if you do want to get in touch with me on social media, or you want to follow me, or you want to share my posts on social media, you can find me at Verbal Diorama on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. If you enjoyed this episode on Zoolander, you might also like the following movies /episodes/actor/model. Episode 90, The Devil Wears Prada, which is again a scathing look into the fashion world, specifically fashion magazines. I love The Devil Wears Prada. I think it is a terrific movie. And if anything, it will definitely teach you what the colour cerulean is. Earlier on, I mentioned Anna Wintour was integral to giving Zoolander some credibility. And obviously Meryl Streep's character, Miranda Priestley, heavily based on Anna Wintour. And again, it comments on things like dieting and size in the fashion industry. Obviously not quite as funny as Zoolander, but then I don't think very much is. Except the following two movies. Episode 124, Romeo and Michele's high school reunion, because they become fashion designers, so it's kind of relevant, and it's a great movie too. Very funny. But I guess the best movie to pair this one with is episode 149, Dodgeball, because obviously it reunites a lot of the cast, and Dodgeball is similarly hilarious, with Ben Stiller actually not playing the Derek Zoolander. He actually plays the villain in Dodgeball, and it's super good fun. So check out all of those movies and episodes. And obviously let me know what you think of my recommendations, although nobody ever does, so maybe no one listens to this part, but I hope you do, because coming up next, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. After my episode on Star Trek the Motion Picture was really well received, I decided to do the sequel, the one that everyone universally agrees is the best. The one where original creator Gene Roddenberry was forcibly removed from. The one where it was made on almost a third of Star Trek the Motion Picture's budget. Join me next week for the history and legacy of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And as I always say, this podcast is free and it always will be free. However, if you've got any value from this podcast whatsoever and you have some spare change and you think, I want to support an indie podcast, I know, I'll support that one, obviously pointing at me. Point at a podcast? What you do now? You point at a podcast. If that's the case, then you can support this podcast in a couple of ways. You could give a one-off tip at verbaldiorama.com/tips, or you can give a regular monthly donation starting from just $1 over at verbaldiorama.com/Patreon. And you can join the amazing patrons of Verbal Diorama. They are Sade, Claudia, Simon, Laurel, Derek, Kat, Andy, Mike, Luke, Michael, Scott, Brendan, Lisa, Sam, Jack, Dave, Stuart, Nicholas, So, Kev, Pete, Heather, Danny, Ali, Stu, Brett, Philip, Michele, Xenos, Sean, Ryno, and Russell. Now, of course, if you want to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me on social media. As I said, I am at Verbal Diorama, or you can email me, verbaldiorama@gmail.com, or you can go to verbaldiorama.com and you can fill out the little contact form and I will get back to you there. You can also find some bits and pieces that I do at filmstories.co.uk as well. Not a fashion magazine, just about movies, but still well worth your time and your money. And finally,
Shut up! Enough already, Ballstein! Who cares about Derek Zoolander anyway? The man has only one look, for Christ's sake! Blue Steel? Ferrari? La Tigra? They're the same face! Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills! I invented the piano key necktie! I invented it! What have you done, Derek? Nothing! You've done nothing! Nothing! And I will be a monkey's uncle if I have you ruin this for me! Because if you can't get the job done, then I will! Die, you wage-hiking scum!
One look! One look! I don't think so!
There it is. Magnum. Holy moly.
Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for!
Dear God. It's beautiful.
That's my kid. That's my son.
I love that kid. Dumb as a stump, but I love him.
Oh, Derek, you did it! That was amazing!
I know! I turned left!
Yeah, that too, but Derek, you saved the Prime Minister of Malaysia!
Oh, right!
bye.
Movies you know, movies you don't. Prequels, sequels, remakes, and trivia and updates. Movies you know, movies you don't. Interesting stories, all the categories.
Mila Jovovich as Katinka Ingeborg. In Katinka Ingeborgavinana. As Katinka Ingeborgavinana. No. Katinka Ingeborgavinan. What? Ingeborgavinana. Yeah,